Hey, everybody. Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is March 7th, 2022, and we need to keep an eye out for the date, March 16th. And maybe after that date comes, I'll let you know what I heard about it. But just pay attention. March 16th might be a day to pay attention to in the future. Welcome to Conflict Radio, everybody. Let me give a quick shout out to everybody that's hanging out. If you want to be, I guess, you want me to say your name, now's the time to write a comment in the live chat. I see Wagon 113 is here, Davy Jones Locker, James Smith, John Clark, David Gosling. How you doing? Chili Peen, Vash Wolford. I hope the audio is okay, everybody. You'll have to give me a thumbs up if the audio is okay. Make sure you do hit the thumbs up button, by the way. It helps get a lot of people in here. This is going to be a popular show today. I see Stefan Gajda is here. Sapphire Elf, hi. Let's see. Scroll up a little bit. Davy Jones Locker, Sup and Stuff. And I guess that's as far up as it'll let me go. So today on the show, we have Scott Mitchell joining us. He's been with us. We have him on the show regularly. You guys know that. Let me give a shout out. Daryl Calhoun is here. How you doing, Daryl? Scott is a mind-opening Bible teacher and host of Bible Mysteries podcast. He's been a student of the Bible history and Bible mysteries for 40-something years, 40-plus years. His careers have spanned music, legal support, and technology. He currently pastors Grace Family Church in Seguin, Texas. Scott, welcome to Conflict Radio, man. How you doing?
Hey, great to be back, Michael. I'm well, and I'm glad you are too.
Awesome. And I guess everybody's saying that we sound okay. I see Pika Pika's here, David Gray. Everybody's saying that the sound is good. Zombiac Brains says hello. Ira Broswell. The fallen angels want the destruction of man, so why would they stop a nuclear war? Well, I guess that's what we're going to talk about. We hear a lot about the UFOs and how they came and, messed with man a little bit after we set off Fukushima and whatnot in Japan. It's something that people talk about. And excuse me, we've talked to Scott before about having the UFOs are really fallen angels. So if the UFOs are fallen angels, the question everybody's really asking here isn't, will UFOs prevent a nuclear war? The question would be, would fallen angels prevent a nuclear war? And that's the question that we're going to present to Scott today. And we're going to start our conversation off there. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a really great thought you've got there, Michael, because we have talked about aliens really are fallen angels masquerading as extraterrestrials, and that is a very strong possibility that is going to be part of their deception to convince the world that they're okay. And what better way to do that than if we were on the verge of nuclear annihilation and they intervene to say, hey, we've come to help you. And while there's any number of scenarios that could play out, that's certainly a possibility. It's clear that they want the destruction of humanity, but not necessarily everybody. We know that the satanic global elite, and whatever you want to call them or define them as, the Great Reset or the World Economic Forum or the Council on Foreign Relations, whoever is the group du jour, they want to reduce the population of the planet to something like 1 billion or less, because it's easier to control. So I could see that they would want to stop a nuclear annihilation and act as the saviors of the world, or that they could want the destruction of most of the population so that their satanic human proxies can gain even more power. It could go either way.
Yeah, and Ira says here, the fallen angels want the destruction of man, so why would they stop a nuclear war? Mm-hmm. The fallen angels have been in control of the earth. I mean, they don't want the entire earth to be a barren wasteland. I mean, what fun is that, right? I mean, if I'm given control, if I'm 6 years old and I'm given control of a playground, the last thing I want to do is set the whole place on fire. Right. You know what I mean? What's the fun in that?
Right. And there's something else that we can bring into the equation, and you and I briefly just barely mentioned this, communicating to each other before tonight, but I don't know if everybody is aware of the fact that these fallen angels that have aligned themselves with Satan are not lockstep in agreement with everything and totally devoted to him. They fight amongst themselves, just as human countries do. And the evidence for that is clear to me because if you look in the book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 10, the prophet Daniel was praying for some wisdom, and an angel came to visit him, and this was an angel of God. And when he arrived, of course, Daniel was scared to see him because when men saw angels, they usually passed out at first. But he said, "Fear not." And it's verse 12 of Daniel 10. But he says, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I'm come for thy words." So it's like God heard you praying, and he sent me to give you some comfort. But verse 13 says, "The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 1 and 20 days, or 3 weeks. Uh, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me." And that's not Michael, the host of Conflict Radio. That's the Michael, the archangel.
Yeah.
I don't recall if you were back there helping him, Michael, but
Oh, it
uh,
wasn't me.
yeah, it wasn't you. So he says he's one of the chief princes, and he's literally the prince of Israel. So what you've got is angels are princes of kingdoms, and all of the kingdoms that weren't Israel at the time were the kingdoms that were controlled by Satan's angels. So this prince of Persia was not an earthly prince. He was a principality and power in spiritual wickedness in high places, according to Paul. Well, he gives him the words, and I won't go into all that because it's part of the context, but it's not necessary to know it. After he finishes giving Daniel the message, he says, "Now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia." So, in a very real sense, God's angels have to fight to get through enemy lines to come down to the planet and break through so far the so to speak, the occupied territory. And then to get back out, he had to do the same thing. But it's interesting. He says, "When I'm going forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come." And Grecia was an old Testament way of saying Greece. So we know that the Persian Empire was conquered by the Greek Empire through Alexander of Macedon. And therefore, while those were human beings and human armies and fighting, they were angelic princes involved. Well, if the prince of Persia was in charge and he went down, I can see in my mind that these princes that are fallen angels and satanic in nature are vying to be second in command. And they're fighting with each other to see who's going to be the next top dog and possibly the one that's going to be among the 10 kings of the book of Revelation. So, in a very real sense, what might be happening is we're about to see the Western prince, whoever that satanic angel is that controls the American hegemony, is about to be replaced with another fallen angel.
All right, and you said something a little earlier that was really interesting to me, and you said that they could pretend to be the saviors. Now that would make a lot of sense too. Like if there was about to be a nuclear exchange,
Mhm.
and they showed up in their Tic Tacs or UFOs or whatever it was that they're flying around with out there, they could then show up as the saviors of the planet, right? That's how they would spin it.
That would make perfect sense to me, Michael, because if you think about it, as I understand it, and I haven't watched every bit of evidence of extraterrestrial phenomenon out there, of course, but I've seen in many cases where the reports of them flying around military facilities where there were nuclear weapons, they somehow got disabled or turned off temporarily or something as if they were trying to demonstrate, hey, we can stop you if we want to. They evidently have some technology to simply remotely control these weapons and turn them on or off. So they're not, and since we didn't really see this until after the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, when the Roswell landing or crash landing happened in 1947 or 48, then it would make sense that we got their attention with that bomb, and now they realize they've got to be, they got to be careful because they don't want us to destroy ourselves for the very reason you said they want the playground.
Yeah, I'm trying to mess with your audio level a little bit because I'm getting a little bit of a fuzz. So
Oh,
hopefully,
do I need to turn it up or down?
I think you need to turn it up. Try
I've
turning
been
yours up a little bit, and
I
then
I turned my input up. Tell me if that helps.
yeah, I don't know. I have to give
We'll
it.
see how it goes.
Yeah, let me give a shout out here to Spartan O Negative real quick. He with a super chat. Thanks so much, Spartan. Really do appreciate it. And if I look up a little bit, I can see that Spartan O Negative has been a member of our channel for 12 months now. That's 1 year of solid support from Spartan. Thanks so much, man. Really do appreciate it. And let's see here. Yeah, that's better. Pika Pika says so. All right. So let's see. Let's see.
Thanks,
Let's see
Pika.
how so. And you know, we got to talk about this a little bit, and we have to be careful in what we say because I've already gotten taken down. I've had a video taken down on the channel because I was mentioning how a lot of the videos that were on Twitter were old videos from way back, when, and they said I was spreading misinformation and took the video down, even though I wasn't, and I was actually speaking truth. So we have to be careful because they're really on their game when it comes to this Russia-Ukraine thing. They've been all over, making sure that they get out the propaganda that they want out. Hey, Blue Chicken, how you doing? So, but this has to be discussed. That some of the stuff that's going on over there, obviously, I'm almost afraid to talk about it because I really don't want to get a strike. But they've been taken out. And when I say they, I'm talking about the Russians have been taking out biological labs. And if anybody doesn't believe that, it was on the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine's website, and they took it down. But if you use the Wayback Machine, you can find it that way, and it's still there. It's still on the internet. You just have to use the Wayback Machine. They can't just put things on the internet and delete the page and it goes away. That's not how it works.
That's true.
So it is there. You can find it. There's 8 bioweapons labs in Ukraine run by America, and it seems like all of the locations that Russia has been attacking has been in those areas, which is very interesting to me. So,
Yeah.
but we are getting, it seems like there's a lot of the big players who are pushing for us to get involved in this. You've got George Soros's kid. You've got the Rothschilds. You've got, uh, you know, Trudeau, Biden, all Macron. All of these guys are trying to drag us into a bigger war because, and I mean, Rothschild literally said on his in a tweet that if they lose Ukraine, that's a big strategic chessboard piece for their new world order. So, I mean, they are really, really, really freaking out, absolutely in total panic about what's going on in Ukraine. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a nuclear false flag or something where it looks like they'll blame it on the Russians and claim it was the Russians that nuked Kyiv or something like that, and to try to push their agenda even more. So it's actually really scary what's going on because they're freaking out, and
Yeah.
I mean they're getting backed in a corner, and when you get a cat trapped in a corner, it's gonna tear you up.
Yeah.
That cat's gonna hurt you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hopefully your listeners are intelligent enough to understand that you don't trust anything or believe anything the major media says about this because they're absolutely controlled by the CIA and they are not telling you the truth. It is propaganda. In a sense, there's I'm not to imply that Russia is a good country because they're controlled by satanic angels too, but I almost feel like there's more integrity, if you can use that word, with the Russians than there is with the United States and NATO. That being said, I don't agree that it was right for Putin to invade Ukraine, but I absolutely believe he was provoked into it on purpose. And they left him with almost no choice. If you've ever watched the Oliver Stone interview with Putin, the 4-part series, this is not the speakings and rantings of an ad man. This guy is smart and cold and calculating and protective of his country, right or wrong, whether you agree with anything that's happening or not. He's not a madman, and this didn't suddenly happen. This has been in the works for over a decade and possibly 20 years. So there's no way that the satanic global elite were caught off guard with this. So when you bring up the biolabs, I absolutely believe he's aware of that. Putin is aware of those. And I absolutely believe that the satanic global elite are trying to get rid of those or hide the evidence of those because they're going to be discovered. But they will never let the truth out about that. So I believe it's the idiots in the West that would provoke a third world war or nuclear war before it would be Russia.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, of course. I mean, you could see it every day in the media, them trying to provoke it. Blinken was out there all day on Sunday talking about how Poland is giving Ukraine these fighter jets, and Poland came out 2 hours before Blinken had his meeting today. Poland came out and said that's fake news. I don't, we don't know anything about this. And then Blinken came out and the press asked him about it, and he said, "Oh well, they're still doing it."
Yeah.
Like, really? No, that's
it's weird. And what's really disturbing for me that's happening is after a few years now of very doubtful election results and a lot of misinformation from the experts about certain viruses, the people that would have called themselves conservative or right-leaning or Christian or whatever definition they use, were right to call out the lies, the misinformation, to question the narrative, to stay on their toes about this and not just fall for everything. But all of a sudden, Russia invades Ukraine, and now the Zionist type Christians, and I'm not saying that in a negative way whatsoever, I'm just talking about Christians that are very supportive of Israel, and that's the term they use. They are all lockstep saying, "Oh, this is the fulfillment of prophecy, Russia's Gog," and on, and they can't wait to get in line to spread the propaganda about Russia, totally ignoring the history of the CIA's involvement in staging the coup to replace the Ukrainian president, the Maidan color revolution, the attacks on the Donbass, all of that. And it's not that Russia's lily white. They're not like a Vestal Virgin here. I mean, they've got their problems just like any other country. Mm-hmm. But you can't ignore the other side of the story. And when you do that and you claim to be the Christian conservative thinker, now you're falling for the exact same thing that you blame the left for doing. And shame on you.
Yeah, it's almost to be honest with you, I'm not very worried. For some reason I feel like everything is just going along like it's supposed to. They're going to totally be exposed, aren't they?
Well, I don't know that, and I'm not worried either, I'll tell you. And I think where we have peace is in our Savior, which is Christ, not the supposed aliens. But and so I don't fear any of it. But I don't believe I would never go on record and say there's not going to be a nuclear war. I believe there very well could be a nuclear war, and here's why. When prophetic battles are discussed in Scripture, such as Gog in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And even the final battles of Armageddon, when the Lord comes back and he actually fights against the Antichrist, those armies are fighting with swords and shields and arrows and spears. Now, you could say that's just figurative language for modern weaponry, but I don't believe that, which means then that something has to take place that's going to completely reverse the world as we know it and reduce us back to the Stone Age, which many environmentalist people would love to do. So is it possible that if not a nuclear war, at the very least an electromagnetic pulse would render all modern technology completely useless, so that we do have to go back to fighting with primitive weapons?
Yeah, but a solar flare could do that as well.
Absolutely, but a war could do that. And it might be that Russia and the United States and Western Europe are completely taken out of the equation. And we're just a smoldering heap by the time the world goes into the 7 years of tribulation, because those battles involve Syria and Egypt and Israel. So where's the United States and all that? So we don't know. I can't predict it. I can't 100% interpret that with any accuracy. But there is a reference to fire falling on the isles that dwell carelessly in the Battle of Gog. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's a nuclear war between, say, NATO and Russia.
All right. Let me ask you this. Do you think this is the Gog Magog battle?
I don't. I do not, because most of Christian and Messianic Christians believe that Gog is Russia. I don't. Gog is, he's called the Prince of Magog, and the Chief Prince, rather, of Magog. So I believe Gog himself is a satanic angel. And whoever he is, that entity, he's been around a long time. And it's a conglomeration of nations, but the land of Magog, traditionally speaking, would be closer aligned with Armenia or the Caucasus Mountains than it would be with Russia, So if you're looking at it geographically, it doesn't make sense. The people that push for the Russia narrative take the Hebrew word for chief, which is Rosh, and they somehow extrapolate that into the Rus, which were apparently the Slavic peoples that settled down the Volga and became Russia. I don't buy that. That's about like the British Israelites who say that the Hebrew word for covenant is brith and the Hebrew word for man is ish. And so therefore the British are the covenant men, the true Israel. I don't believe that's true at all. The British are not Israel. Israel is Israel.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think this plays out? Do you think that that the deep state will use a nuclear weapon?
I believe they would. I don't believe Russia would be the first ones to launch it necessarily. It's possible that they could, because I don't know what's in Putin's head and I don't know what drives him. But he seems to be more protective than anything. I don't think he's trying to expand the Soviet Union and take over Eastern Europe again. I think that's a bunch of baloney. I mean, even Fox News idiots were saying things like the 40-mile convoy of trucks and armored vehicles from Russia got stuck in the mud or had flat tires.
Yeah, I saw that actually. And they don't have spare tires in Russia, he said.
Well, first of all,
Russia's so broke they don't have spare tires.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, Russia's economy is not that bad, and number two, I mean, they're not anywhere close to the United States, and they spend 1/10 of their GDP on defense compared to the United States. But nobody, I mean, it's not like Putin's an idiot and his generals are idiots and his military strategists are morons. You go in with a convoy like that and they get stuck in the mud. Well, they would be sitting ducks for the Ukrainian Air Force. So they didn't move those vehicles down there until they had air superiority. And the reason they're sitting there is because he's sending Ukraine a message saying, give up and lay down your weapons and we can stop this. Or if you don't, this is going to be unleashed. So for Fox News to say those things just shows you how ridiculously controlled they too are. They're controlled opposition by the CIA.
Yeah, I was seeing today that they were saying, oh, the Russian advances have all but stopped. There's a chance now that Ukraine could actually win the war. What a joke. If Ukraine thinks they're going to beat Russia, they got another thing coming. I mean, Russia's holding back for some reason, and I don't know why.
Yeah, there's a lot of people trying to figure that out, and the so-called Russian experts that do have some intelligence about them are trying to figure out why he's been so patient and trusting and willing to negotiate with the West when all they ever do is lie and renege and break covenants and contracts, and then stage secret coups. And I mean, the Chechen rebels, all of that was staged by the CIA against Russia to try to instigate terrorism into the Russian homeland. So, we were doing it back when Russia invaded Afghanistan, arming Taliban with Osama bin Laden. So,
Oh, yeah.
it's not like this is you can't find this information out. It's just that the media won't cover it because it doesn't fit the narrative, and it's a type of psychological mind control.
Yeah, we were the ones that pretty much created ISIS in Syria to try to overthrow that country and get Russia out of there. I'm trying to understand what is the deal with Russia, because it seems like the deep state has been wanting to overthrow Russia for the longest time. Is it simply because they haven't allowed their banking system in to take over their banks like every other country does? I mean, what is it with Russia? Because we've been going after Russia for forever. Or is it the same thing with the World War II? We had the Nazis obviously going after Russia. It seems like what's happened is that there's another Reich forming.
In Ukraine, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There are neo Nazis in Ukraine that NATO has been wooing and arming and cultivating to basically attack the ethnic Russians in the eastern part of the country, in the Lugansk and the Donetsk. I'm probably saying those wrong, but and Crimea too, for that matter, was also largely ethnically Russian. But the media here lies and say Russia invaded Ukraine and annexed it, or excuse me, Crimea, but that's not true. They literally had troops there because there's a year-round southern port that's been there for many, many years for Russia, and they had an election in Crimea. And because they were being threatened by the neo-Nazis, the troops were stationed there to allow the free flow of the election process to take place. And I think they voted like 80% or better to be annexed by Russia. The other two regions we're talking about in the Donbass, Putin has refused to annex them or give them that initiative, and so they decided to just try to declare independence, and he finally did recognize that independence, and that's when this kind of recent thing started happening, because they've been, you don't hear on the news that they've been shelled and bombed for I don't know how many years now, at least 6 or 7. And there's been 14,000 deaths of ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine that were killed by these other Ukrainian Nazis.
Oh yeah, I know that they banned them from even being able to speak Russian.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that sounds a lot like the censorship here of
They actually
Facebook
passed
and
a law. Yeah, they actually passed a law to make it illegal to speak Russian in Ukraine. Like seriously, like
yeah.
this has to do with the what is it? The Karzakian mafia. How do you say it? Am I saying that right?
I think is it you're talking about in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Um,
It
boy,
goes it goes back a long time. I got it. I posted
you're
it.
not talking about Khazarian.
Yes, that's it. The
Oh boy.
Khazarian mafia. You know who that is? What is that exactly?
Well, if you want to get into the history of Khazaria, then you open up a huge, huge can of worms. Because then we're going to get into this whole thing about why are they hidden from the pages of history? Because when you grew up in school, Michael, I'm sure they taught you about the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Egyptians, and then how the Roman Empire fell apart and that Europe formed out of it and things like that. But we were never told a word about the Khazarian Empire. Were you?
So what is the Khazarian Empire? What was it exactly? Do you know?
Yeah, they were Turkic peoples, ethnically Japhethites, the three sons of Noah, Japheth,
Uh-huh.
and they settled into the Caucasus Mountains. So these are people that would have been, they were Caucasian people. They were from that region. So I can't think of all the nations there. I know Armenia is one of them, and possibly Azerbaijan or something like that. My geography is pretty poor,
Uh-huh.
but ultimately, some of them settled. We're talking over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, but some of them settled into the region, which is now sort of southern Russia, eastern Ukraine. So for a time of nearly 1,000 years, they grew into a very powerful empire. And as I understand it, they were so feared that even Viking raiders, when they sailed down these rivers of that region to go raid other places, perhaps even in the Middle East, they paid the tax rather than take on these Khazarians, because they didn't want to deal with that. They didn't want to have to mess with them. And the way I understand it, and I get this from a book called The 13th Tribe by Arthur Kessler, who was a Hungarian Jew researching his own genetics when he discovered this. The way I understand it is they became a pretty mighty force, and they were around about the time Islam was founded and began to spread across the Middle East and then into Europe. And they got as far as across North Africa and into Spain, and you know about the Moors, and they took over a lot of Spain. But it was the Khazarian Empire that essentially held them back from coming into Eastern Europe. They were that powerful. Well, about this time, Christianity and Judaism and Islam were the three major religions of the Western Middle Eastern world. And the king of Khazaria, and he was called a Kagan, interesting name if you look that up, by the way, the husband of Victoria Nuland, who stirred up all this crap in Ukraine, is Robert Kagan. Okay. And they're all part of Biden's foreign policy wonks. But the king or Kagan of Khazaria called for the heads of the three dominant religions. So they had some archbishop from the Catholic Church, some imam from Islam, and some rabbi from Israel or Jew, wherever they were. I'm not sure what part, because Israel had already been long destroyed by the Roman Empire in 70 AD. And he heard their case for which was the true religion. And he decided that because both Christianity and Islam tout Abraham as the origin, if you go back far enough to their faith, that Judaism was the original closest to the truth, because it really was. I mean, Abraham begat Isaac, Isaac begat Jacob, Jacob is Israel. So he declared that the national religion of Khazaria would be Judaism. Now, everybody didn't convert. He converted, and many people did, but it was a nation that allowed everybody to worship whatever they wanted to. But the majority of the population converted to Judaism. Now, in time, it is said, between the Mongols and the Russians fighting against them, that empire eventually crumbled, and they kind of disintegrated and traveled west into Poland and Germany. And hence the term Ashkenazi Jews are in reality the Khazarian people. And so this is, again, I'm just telling you what the book is saying and what I've learned in history. It's not that I necessarily agree with it, but they contend that these Khazarian or Ashkenaz Jews are in fact not true Semitic people, but they are actually Turkic people from Khazaria.
So you think that there's a lot of these, I guess, people still out there? Could they be one of the lost tribes?
I don't know that there's such a thing as the lost tribes from the standpoint of what people try to make it today. Israel was 12 tribes. The nation was split back in the days of Solomon and became two nations, Israel to the north and Judah to the south. And two tribes remained true to God longer than the other 10. Judah and Benjamin remained true to God longer than the rest of the 10 tribes. And those 10 became ultimately known as Samaria in the days of Jesus, and Judea. And then Judea also turned as wicked as Samaria. And ultimately God allowed them to be destroyed by Titus, the Roman general, in 70 AD. And they were scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. So the lost tribes and things like that, I think is people trying to say that we secretly have some Jewish group over here or that was never recognized, and they're not really from the land of Palestine or Israel or whatever you want to call it. But I'm not sure I'm buying any of that. Israel was Israel. They are a people from Abraham. They are Semitic, and they are the people that God made a covenant with. They rebelled against him time and time again, and for 1,500 years, after never keeping the law, they finally rejected everything and murdered every prophet and then killed Jesus, who was supposed to be their Messiah. And when that happened, God closed that door and turned his face from the nation and turned to the Gentile nations with an apostle named Paul and sent him to preach the message that saves men today. And he interrupted the national salvation program with Israel, and it's been on hold now for 2,000 years. But there's a 70-week prophetic timetable that has to finish, and 69 of those weeks were concluded at the death of Jesus. The final week, or the 70th week, which is 7 years, is going to be the time of tribulation.
Yeah, and let me tell you this, everybody. If you don't have food, if you're not stocking up on food in your house, if you haven't yet, you need to get out there right now and buy as much food as you can. I'm talking about rice, flour, sugar, salt. Get out there and get stocked up, because things are going to get. I have a feeling that we're just getting the tip of the iceberg here. All right. I mean, oil. I think oil is going to go over $200 a barrel. I think it could even go upwards around 250, 300 before all this is said and done. And let me give a quick shout out here to David Gosling real quick. Thank you so much for the €10 super chat. Really do appreciate it. So I can get that off of there. Really do appreciate it. And you need to get out there and get some food, because they're already saying that with everything that's going on, the price of food for the average household is going to go up over $1,000 a month. Now, I don't know what the average household is where you are, but in the United States, I would guess that the average household is right about 4 or 5 people. So if you're going up over $1,000 a month for 4 or 5 people, that's $250, $300 a person. That food's going to go up. And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, money's tight. I mean, I filled up my gas tank the other day, and it was $52 for gas, and I drive a Rogue. I mean, that's insane. This is crazy, and this isn't even anywhere near where we are. And here we are buying. They're like, oh well, the oil that we're buying from Russia is obviously supporting the war, right? So if oil right now it's like $130 a barrel. I think it broke $130 a barrel today. So we are paying Russia $130 for a barrel of oil, but then their ruble has crashed. Okay, but it hasn't crashed in Russia. Dr. Strangelove, thank you so much. Really do appreciate the $20 super chat, man. I really do appreciate it. You guys are gonna keep the show alive, because I mean, things are getting tight. And let me finish what my thought was, is that the ruble's crashed, but just because the ruble's crashed doesn't mean that a Russian going to buy bread is now paying, instead of 3 rubles for a loaf of bread, they're now paying 30 rubles for a loaf of bread. They're still paying 3 rubles. The only thing that they've done is made that $130 a barrel oil, instead of the Russian people getting 200 rubles or whatever it was, they're now getting 1,000 rubles. So I mean, it actually is helping the Russians. But isn't that what we normally do during times of great conflict? Isn't that normally what happens? I mean, even during World War II, I believe that the bankers and the Rothschilds funded both sides. That's what we're doing. We took off. We were completely energy independent for the first time in our history. A year ago, we were energy independent, and now they're saying, "Oh well, don't worry. We only get 10% of the oil that the United States uses. Only 10% of the oil that we use, we buy from Russia." And I think from what I heard, that's like 500 million barrels a day. It's just 10% of what we use. I mean, think about it. It's an insane amount of money. I mean, oh, that's only 10%. Well, 10% is a lot. 10%, let me get 10% of $1 trillion. That's a lot. That's still a lot of money. Maybe, oh, well, we only gave him 10%. Well, you know what? I'm still sitting here with, $10 billion laughing at you going, ha ha ha. Yeah. Thanks for the, not very much, all ridiculous. We export oil. We do, but not very much, Michael. We were energy independent, and we're not anymore. Biden's out there begging Venezuela and Iran for oil now. How sick is this? And
Yeah.
all they have to, all we have to do is go back to, all we had to do is go back to where we were a year ago, and everything would, we would be okay. We wouldn't be, but you have to fund both sides, right? I mean, if you're the deep state and you're trying to, start up World War III for some reason. Now, let me ask you this, Scott, because this is something that I've seen floating around out there. That there's a humongous city-sized UFO underneath Ukraine, buried in Ukraine, that somehow has been activated and turned on, and that's why Russia's going in there, because they're wanting control of this massive UFO that's underground there. What would you think of that? I mean, is that possible? That I mean, if what you say, that the fallen angels are flying UFOs, it would be a fallen angel UFO. So what do you think of that story, or do you think that that's not the case?
Well, that's the first I've heard of it. It's fascinating. So there's actually a large UFO buried in Ukraine that Russia wants to control.
It's like the size of a city, and
Wow.
it's recently like turned on.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I mean, you know, it's got to be clear by now that the governments of the world are aware of the UFO presence and they've been hiding it from the people. So we're getting to that point where they can no longer deny it. And the evidence is too much for them to continue. Well, I mean, there's always going to be people that can brainwash, but not everybody. So if
Every country would know about it, though, right? I mean, if every country's leadership knew about the UFO phenomenon and knew that this was going on, I mean, one of them is bound to have spilt the beans by now, right?
Yeah, I think people do try to, but sometimes they get killed. And they get threatened with, anybody that's ever reported anything that from the military has always been told they were threatened not to say anything. So there is a control mechanism in place. But if they are, so I do believe that in World War II, the Nazi Germany technology was so advanced when we finally defeated them by the grace of God, and they went in to clear up the rubble. They found advanced technology that was so overwhelming in Operation Paperclip that they couldn't even understand it. It's not that they couldn't read the German. They had to get German scientists that worked on it to help interpret what these findings were. And ultimately, through Operation Paperclip, all of that brain drain came over to either the Soviet Union or to the United States. And that's kind of how our deep state began, or transferred from the Third Reich to the United States. And when that happened, I believe that Hitler was probably in communication with the satanic angels and as UFOs presenting advanced technology. And because it's sort of interesting that right after World War II ended, and in 1947, or I think it was July, was when the craft crash landed in Roswell. It's almost as if to say that the aliens or fallen angels said to the United States, okay, now it's your turn. If you do our bidding, we will, send you a craft, or maybe it was an older one or something, but we'll let it crash land and let you reverse engineer it. And you can start to use this technology and gain hegemony of the world. And they did. And incidentally, they had Hitler's Werner von Braun, and they had Eichmann and some of these other guys that did all those experiments on the Jewish people in Germany. That they used the mind control Mengele's experiments and all that stuff, and that became part of the psychological warfare of the United States. So we're not good guys; we're bad guys. Not the American people, but the leadership in the deep state. So therefore, it's very possible that maybe if what you're saying is true in Ukraine, and it's Russia's turn, assuming that is true, and that this American fallen angel is about to go down as the chief prince, and Russia's angel is going to be the new prince, the new kid in town, that maybe they're saying, here's the technology we're going to let you have to go advance, and you become the superpower. That's just a guess.
All right, let me. I'm going to throw this up here and let you take a look at this because I found this to be fascinating. This is the Russian coat of arms, and it seems to be uh, somebody on horseback here in a white hat killing a reptilian. And you can Google this yourself. There it is, right there. I'll make it real good and big. See the little reptile creature down here? It's kind of got wings. And I think it's Derek Gilbert that said the fallen angels could be even dragons, right?
Yeah, isn't that supposed to be symbolic of Saint George and the dragon?
Oh, I don't have any idea, but it looks like a white hat killing a reptilian, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, definitely as a man on a white horse is putting a spear into a dragon. So yeah, I'm not sure how to take that, but I can see that clearly, and I wasn't aware that that was on the Russian coat of arms. So that's pretty interesting.
Do you think that we hear a lot about the reptilians and I guess they drink blood or whatever. I guess I'm gonna go. I have to worry about what I say on this channel. If I'm not back for a couple weeks, guys, and this video's gone, uh, you can always find me on Rumble. But Britney Spears posted this morning on Instagram. She went on this huge rant about when she was a kid, she was forced to work all these crazy hours, and they literally took nearly 8 gallons of blood from her a week.
I don't know how you would live if they took 8 gallons. I would think that's maybe eight. No, I don't think you could take 8 liters.
I'm
8 pints.
I'm sure she was exaggerating a little bit, but
yeah.
I mean, not exaggerating, but I mean, when you're a kid and they're sucking blood, they're taking blood from you constantly, and it obviously looks like more than it really is, and you remember it as being a lot more than it really was.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the case with her, but she's totally getting ready to expose, I think, what happened to her with Hollywood. And what do you think of that? Do you think that that fallen angels could actually shapeshift into people and assume powerful roles in our government or Hollywood?
Yeah, the Bible says that Satan is transformed to an angel of light. So it's no great thing if his ministers be transformed as the ministers of righteousness in 2 Corinthians chapter 13. So if that means shape shifting, I have no problem with it. I've never seen that, but it wouldn't surprise me. And in fact, it's very possible. So could they be, I don't know that they would necessarily need to shape shift into a human being to influence government because they can just possess the bodies. And I really think that's really what's happening is these people that we've mentioned, Biden and Victoria Nuland and Blinken and all the rest of them, if they're not possessed by devils that are the operative minions of fallen angels or the angels themselves, they are controlled by these entities and willingly so. Because Biden, you look at him and there's a part of you that almost wants to feel sorry because you can see he has dementia. He doesn't have a clue where he is or what he's saying. He's probably pumped up on so many drugs because the man has lost his mind. But at the same time, I have no sympathy for him because he has been a professional parasite and grifter his entire life. He's never produced a single thing in his life. He's been sucking at the government teat on the taxpayer's dollar. And as far as I'm concerned, he will deserve everything he gets when it comes to God's perfect justice. And he's not the only one.
Do you think it's possible that we're kind of watching a movie and that none of these people are even who they say they are? I mean, if you look at pictures from Biden 10 years ago and pictures of Biden today, he doesn't even look like the same person. I don't know if you've seen like the pictures where they show like the earlobe, how the earlobe is kind of like a lobe on the original Biden, but this Biden, the ear connects straight to the neck. Like, I have to maybe I could find the picture and show you guys. But is it possible that, I mean, we've seen people pull these masks off their face, that playing in movies and stuff, and that do makeup and everything else. Is it possible that that what we're seeing is really just a movie to fool our enemies because we've been at war since COVID broke out?
Yeah, I simply believe that this is the fulfillment of all the scripture says about, the wars and rumors of wars, the beginning of sorrows. Men shall be lovers of themselves, hateful, deceitful, boasters, proud, blasphemers, everything that's happening in our culture. And by the way, again, not to lift up Russia as anything great or virtuous, because they're not. But when you watch the interview that Oliver Stone did with Putin, he wants to protect, according in his words now, whether he's lying, I don't know, but he wants to protect Russian culture from Western influence and the negative influence that it's bringing into his country. And he kind of brought a resurgence of the Russian Orthodox Church and things like that, which under Soviet Russia, they weren't allowed to have any churches. So there's an interesting take on that, where they're becoming more open and more free in a religious sense, at the least, and we are becoming less. Because ultimately, what's going to happen is Christianity is going to become the final outsider, the final othering when it takes place, and will be attacked for all the ills of the world. We'll be blamed. Like right now, it's you're not wearing a mask, so you're blamed. The unvaccinated, they're blamed, or whatever. And right now, it's you're Russian, you're blamed. There's always going to be somebody that's going, or if you try to look at both sides of the equation, then you're Putin's puppet, or you're something like that. So it's all based on emotion, all based upon manipulation, and all based upon psychological control. But the people who think and speak and try to look at all of the angles are vilified. And that's going to be mainly Christianity, who's trying to seek the truth of the gospel, the love of Christ, the means of salvation, and get that to people. We're going to ultimately be stopped. So I suspect ultimately Satan's aim is to eliminate the people of God, whether they be Christian, or when the time is right, whether they be Israel.
All right, let me. I did find that picture, so let me show you guys real quick. If you could see, I guess I can't zoom in any more than that, but the one on the left is the old Biden, right? And the one on the right is the one that we have in there today. And if you could see how the ear on the one on the right connects right with his face, there's no lobe. And here's the one on the left. It actually has a lobe where it curls around a little bit and doesn't connect to his face, like it's really a different person.
I
You know what
think
I mean? Like
Biden looks like Walter from Jeff Dunham,
yeah,
the puppet.
your body's just not going to change, like things like that. You know what I mean? Like simple things like that aren't going to change. Here's, I guess I was hitting another one. Here's another one here. Look, you could see how they're curved here, and then this one, it just connects right to his. There's no lobe. It's like, what is going on, right? Does it make
That is
you think
interesting.
there's something more than what we're seeing going on, right?
That's pretty interesting.
Wow. All right. So let me give a shout out here to everybody. I guess I haven't been reading the chat. I've been playing around with trying to find things to show you. And Akram Music says plastic surgery. I mean, I don't know how many people have plastic surgery to connect their earlobe to their face. So so maybe give me an example where somebody's actually done that, or somebody that offers that. Show me a website where there's a plastic surgeon going, hey, I connect earlobes to people's faces. Come down and check my place out, because that's what we do. And Brian Griggs says AI makes clones, bro. And that's the funny thing about it. Do you think that a lot of these people, maybe they're gone and they've got clones out there who are really just inhabited with demons? Is that possible?
It sure could be. I mean, I think that the the image of the beast is referred to in the book of Revelation, where when the beast arrives, when the Antichrist arrives, the world's going to worship him, and there's going to set up an image in the temple that will be rebuilt in Jerusalem at that time. and this image both speaks and appears to be real or alive. I think it's possible that could be an AI type of technology. So absolutely, there is something demonic about all of it, but there could be something specifically going on right now that we're not even aware of. Because what we do know that has been revealed about AI and the current type of technology that we can see and they show on things like the internet and TV, that's only what they're allowing you to know is actually real. They're probably far more advanced than that. It's just like the military is not going to show you their secret Area 51 weaponry. You're going to see the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber after it gets released, but they're working on stuff that you'll never know about. What drone capability they have, you don't know about.
Oh, yeah, that stealth bomber they were doing in the 80s.
Yeah. So, they were way, and that technology, by the way, came directly from the brain drain of the Nazis, incidentally.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's very possible that they've got some things going on right now and we don't even realize it. It's getting to the point with CGI and photoshopping and things like that you almost can't tell whether it's an animation or a real person.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. No, I've seen some stuff. I've seen some stuff. Even I've been messing around with this app called Face Bomb or something. I think I've been having fun with it. Like where I put my picture up there, and it goes and does its own thing. It's called Face Dance. I've been having fun with it. So yeah, Daryl Calhoun says Paperclip, and we need to do a show on Operation Paperclip because I think there's a lot happened there. Do you think it's possible that when we finally got into Germany at the end of World War II, we found out that maybe the Germans were actually onto something, with the technology they were pursuing or something they found up in Antarctica or something, to where they were pretty much able to just convert the entire political system of the United States. I mean, it's not that the Nazis lost World War II, they just took over our political system and that's what we are now.
Yeah, I do believe that. I don't know if it was fascism or communism or what, but we are not a constitutional republic anymore. We haven't been for a long time. And you get back into all of the original, you can talk about Freemasonry and Illuminati and CFR and all that stuff, but ultimately this all ties together. This is any number of factions vying for control because ultimately somebody wants to be the top dogs under the Antichrist. There's 10 kings. They're going to arise and they're going to give their power to the beast. And which one of these satanic global elites wouldn't want to be one of the 10 kings? Or at the very least, if they're Nephilim, which one of the fallen angels wouldn't want to have their child to be one of the 10 kings? So that would mean that there's going to be 10 angels that are going to probably procreate with a human woman to bear or begat one of the 10 kings. Since the Antichrist himself is going to be begotten by Satan and a human woman, why wouldn't the 10 kings be the same?
But I think it was wasn't it you we were talking to once before that said it's possible that the Antichrist could be artificial intelligence?
No, I don't believe he's artificial intelligence. He's a real person. I think the image of the beast could be AI. Oh, but okay. The beast himself will be a real person who, incidentally, will be killed at some point in his career in the 7 years. It appears to be at the 3.5 mark. And he's going to be killed he's going to be killed with a sword, just like it died, just like any man. And then 3 days later is when he rises from the dead, possessed by the spirit of the bottomless pit, the angel called Apollyon. And he will rise up to be the beast at that point in time. And so it seems like the image of the beast is going to be erected right then, where he's going to declare himself to be God, and they're going to put the image in the temple of God, which is a total desecration of everything that the Jews believe in.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with us and listening to the show. Give a thumbs up because it really does help our channel. I know we got well over 100 people in here, and only 64 likes. So please hit that like button. It does help the channel. If you can't super chat or you're already subscribed or whatever, I mean, just at least hit the like button because it does help us out. And we need all the support we can get right now because to be quite honest with you guys, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna be able to keep doing this 2 days a week. I think I was talking to somebody else about it not too long ago, so I'm trying to, but I mean, this channel is gonna have to grow a little bit and do a little bit more than it's doing. And I definitely do appreciate all the help, but we do need some more, and really do appreciate all of the donations and super chats that we get. It really is a big help. Thank you so much. Now is the time for questions. If anybody has a question, we've got 30 minutes or so with Scott. Normally, if you guys are going off with your questions, normally he stays a little longer, and so we can get to everybody. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat box in the live chat area, and we'll ask Scott your questions. And Scott, is there anything that you wanted to mention that we haven't talked about?
No, I think we covered what you and I briefly discussed would be show topics today. I just want to reiterate what I said earlier that I think your audience would believe anyway, and that is to not take one side of any discussion about anything going on in the world today. Use your common sense and search it out. And if you're a believer like me, compare it to the scriptures. Let the scripture interpret world events. Don't try to read it the other way around.
Yeah, and I mean, it is possible though that the scripture has been manipulated by man.
It's obviously that the scripture has been manipulated by man since the beginning. Even the serpent said to Eve in the garden, "Yea, hath God said," and he twisted the word of God. But if God is God, and if he's worthy of our worship, somewhere he left a true record of his word. If he didn't, he lied, and I'm not going to worship him. So to just dismiss it and say the Bible's written by men and it's been distorted, that might be true, and it is true. But didn't God preserve a perfect record of his word for us? And if he didn't, how would we possibly know what is the truth? So it's irrational to say that it doesn't exist. It's logical to say that it's been adulterated and attempted to be changed by men, and it has since the very beginning. But it would be completely irrational to say that God cannot preserve his word for us somewhere today that we can have it and hold it in our hands.
All right, so we're looking at some questions here that I see coming in. Sapphire Elf wants to clarify the supposition that UFOs are fallen angels.
Well, we discussed that in a number of other podcasts, but just try to give you the summary of it. Since we know that in Revelation 12, there's going to be a battle between Michael and his angels and the dragon, or Satan and his angels, then they're going to be cast down to the earth. The conjecture is if they are cast down to the earth and then confined, which they're not now, what are they going to say? How are they going to explain this? And the perfect deception would be to come down in their craft and say, "We are your alien ancestors. We seeded you millennia ago, and now we've come to move you on to the next phase of your evolution. Take this injection, take this mark, take this pill, whatever, and you will become like us," which is the very thing the serpent said to Eve, "You shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." So that's where we get the connection of fallen angels being either associated with or aligned with or actually posing as aliens.
You there?
I'm here.
All right. I thought I lost you for a second there.
I was talking. I guess you didn't hear
it? No, you stopped.
Oh, that's funny. I stopped when I was finished. Yeah.
All right. Wand Blitty Azuya says, is Israel a fascist state? And with American, European Union, NATO, World Banks, are they starting a war with Russia?
I don't know if Israel's starting the war.
Now, I mean, isn't Israel and the whole Mossad thing kind of behind everything that's going on?
I do believe Mossad is behind a lot, like the deep state is in our country too. And I do believe they're in line with the United States and closely joined at the hip. I don't know what Israel is as a current nation. But, somebody posted a little bit earlier, and I don't know if it was Go-Kart or somebody, but they said that there's many antichrists, not one, as if to say there's not going to be a single person who's the antichrist. That's not accurate. John said, even today, even now, are there many antichrists? Therefore, we know it is the last days. He didn't say there's not a single person who is called the son of perdition, which is the antichrist. But he defined antichrist as anybody that denies that Jesus has come in the flesh. Well, that would be the nation Israel from the standpoint of its politics. I'm not talking about the people. Okay. So if the majority of Israel rejects the idea that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, they are by definition of the New Testament antichrist. And therefore the spirit of the antichrist is in them. It is in many other countries too. So there's nothing special or unique about that, in my opinion. I'm just saying that the political entity known as modern Israel, to me, is no better than any other nation.
All right. Joseph C. says you misquoted 2 Corinthians 13.
How did I misquote it? What's the passage, the specific verse?
Quote it again.
I think I was actually giving you a summary of 2 Corinthians 13. Let me see. I'm going to go back to it and read it and see if I can figure out.
Yeah.
What he's saying is I meant to give the reference should have been 2 Corinthians 12, verse 13. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
So it should have been, let me make sure I get that right. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 11, actually, verse 13. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. And I think what he was saying was I cited the wrong chapter. It's chapter 11, verse 13 through 15, not chapter 13. I don't think he meant that I was misquoting it, although that may be what he said.
All right. James Smith says, why is everybody focused on this war when the war is inside every man and woman's hearts and minds?
Well, the battle for the souls of men, that's true. That is the war that we waged. And so it's a good point. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That is where we should focus our attention. And it is a daily battle. It's not esoteric or ethereal. It's real, about God the Father desiring to have fellowship with you, a child that was born into this world, born in a sin condition, and he greatly desires to have a relationship with you and to bring you back to him. But he can't make you do it. Only you can believe on the one mechanism that he provided to reconcile you back to him, and that's through the blood of Jesus Christ. So he's right. There is a spiritual battle going on.
All right. Davy Jones Locker says, is the Nephilim walking the earth today?
That's a great question. I would like to think yes, but I can't prove it. And I don't know that we'll be able to prove it until they're manifested through whatever this final event is going to be that declares the Antichrist to be God and the 10 kings to give their power to the beast. But I would like to say that I believe they probably are. I have my doubts about Zuckerberg. I'm fairly convinced if he's not a Nephilim hybrid, he's at least a hybrid alien.
Who's that?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, yeah. He does look creepy, doesn't he?
Well, he can't be human. There's just no possible way.
All right. So since Davey has the question up, and he always goes here, I got to ask, is it possible that the Bigfoot that everybody's always talking about, the Bigfoot out in the woods that they're running around with, is really the true man of Earth, and we as humans, we're all the hybrids?
Yeah. It's possible, but I don't think it's true.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer.
I mean, it's a great idea. It would make a great story, a great movie script. I think you should develop that. I would go pay money to watch that movie.
All right. Bernard Evans wants to know thoughts on prophecy of Our Lady of Good Success, who 400 years ago in Ecuador prophesied a satanic takeover of the Vatican via Freemasonry at the start of the 21st century.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with her, so I can't really comment. But if she did prophesy that, it looks like she was pretty dead on, doesn't it? Yeah, I couldn't speak to it though because I've never read it.
Yeah, what would you have to say about the church and the Vatican? I mean, what is with that funky throne room with like the snake and everything else in there? What is that all about?
You know, excuse me. I think what we have to understand is that the Christian church started under persecution, starting with Christ and then the 12. And it began to grow and multiply through all that time. Ultimately, the Roman Empire decided it became a threat. And so they began to have national or state persecution of believers. At first, it was just Israel persecuting the believers as a sect that was heretical, following Jesus of Nazareth. Then it finally grew so large that the Roman Empire realized that the threat to their own power, because they declared the emperors to be gods, was at stake. So when finally, and I don't remember the year now, so I apologize, I'll get my history wrong, but one Roman emperor, and I think it was Constantine, ended the persecution of Christians and himself supposedly converted and got baptized. So that seemed like a good thing, and the church had rest from the state persecution. But the bad thing was, at that point, then the state got involved in appointing the bishops and building the churches or turning pagan temples into churches or whatever. And it sort of became a merger of the church with the state. And whenever the church ever merges with the state, it gets corrupted and it goes bad. And that's essentially what happened to the church.
Yeah,
And it's been that way ever since.
it's like it seems like it's so political now, the church. I mean, it's not supposed to be, right?
Yeah, it's not. We're not supposed to be involved in that. We are not here to spread political anything. We are here to proclaim the gospel and to be prepared to leave this world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't believe that the current pope is a good guy. I think he's a fascist or a communist or whatever you want to call him. But that's just the current guy. I'm not trying to pick on anybody's religion, but there seem to be people in the Catholic Church that realize that, and that Archbishop Carlo, I've forgotten his name already. We've mentioned him before, and let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'm looking at Our Lady of Good Success would be a great art says. So I'm writing that down, and I'll look into that. That sounds interesting. So I will check that out. Bernard.
Yeah, Carlo Vigano. He's an archbishop that he's got a declaration. In fact, he just released it today. It's very long, but it's a good read, and he comments on a lot of what we're talking about today. But he seems to be a true believing, open-minded Christian person in the Catholic Church that doesn't hold any punches and tries to call it like it is. So you can read his statement on the Russian-Ukrainian crisis published today if you search up Carlo Vigano, excuse me. I don't speak Italian. I'm sorry. Carlo Maria Vigano, Archbishop of to the United States of America. Huh, interesting.
All right. Sapphire L says, besides the media propaganda, is there a real risk of USA or NATO putting boots on the ground and risk mad theory fallout?
Yeah, there's a risk of us putting boots on the ground. I think it's being provoked. I think NATO's trying to goad that and make it look like Putin provoked it. It's going to be a false flag of some kind.
I'm surprised that Ukrainian army is not shelling Poland. Blaming it on Russian troops anyway.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that they bombed some NATO country and set it to look like Russia did it, so they can have excuse to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. It's coming. It's coming.
If I was that guy, that's totally what I would do. He's such a scumbag. I don't know why he just doesn't surrender. I mean, it's not like Russia's like asking these horrible demands. I mean, he just wants a buffer zone between his country and the West. And honestly, I mean, JFK did the same thing during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So, I mean, we didn't want Russia to go there. We would have gone to war with Cuba had they not pulled out. So, I mean,
And it's interesting you bring that up, Michael, because I don't know if not enough people realize this, but when the Russian Cuban Missile Crisis started, again, it was the Soviet Union. They're not good guys, not taking sides, but that was their reaction to us putting missiles in Turkey.
yeah.
The United States provoked that, and we secretly removed them after we avoided nuclear war. But that was Russia moved. It was a counter move. We provoked them. They didn't just suddenly decide to put missiles in Cuba. They were reacting to the United States and NATO putting missiles in Turkey aimed right at Moscow.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're back there now anyway, which is
yeah.
Ira Broswell says, is it possible that Donald Trump is the Antichrist?
No, the Antichrist is going to be an Israeli person from the tribe of Dan, which is why Dan is not mentioned as one of the 12 tribes in the book of Revelation.
Dan,
D-A-N, yep.
I mean, it could be like Dan Bargina's kid or something.
No, his name is not Dan. He's from the tribe of Dan.
I know.
But if you want to read an excellent book about that, it's The Final Nephilim by Ryan Pitterson. Very scripturally accurate and annotated. You won't read a better book.
All right. Vash wants to know, do you think the current events are set in place to push for electricity as the main energy source to centralize control? Oil will be too expensive and another reason to push electric cars.
Yeah, that may very well be one of the World Economic Forum's agendas, or the globalists or whoever, because it's all about control. So and to me, the green or the environmental movement is a false front. In the guise of saving the planet, it's designed to gain control for the satanic global elite. So yeah, if they did that, it would just be another way they're going to control you. And that's what they're after. They want control.
All right. When Biddy Azuya says, if the political parties in Israel are Antichrist, then is this why the Gog and Magog comes from the north to destroy Israel or save Israel from the Antichrist?
So Gog, that's a great question. Gog, it appears, and this is a really tricky passage of scripture because there's two chapters in Ezekiel 38 and 39 that mention this battle. It's not one battle. It's two. And they're in reverse order. Chapter 38 is the battle that takes place at the end of the 1,000-year or millennial reign of Christ in Revelation 20. Chapter 39 is the first invasion that's going to set the stage for the beginning of the 7 years of tribulation. So we would have to get into a very deep theological discussion here, and I don't think your program is the right platform for this, but let me try to summarize it easily. The book of Hosea in the Old Testament is basically God's divorce letter to Israel. And you can read it to see why. But at one point in chapter 5, God says, I will return to my place until they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction, they will seek me early. And God essentially ascended back up to the Father in the form of Jesus Christ when he was rejected by the nation and crucified. And he hid his face from them, and he has done so now for 2,000 years. At some point, this battle will begin when whoever Gog is, and I know he's a fallen entity, but he's going to inhabit the body of some person. And whatever that coalition of nations is going to include, Magog is the land. And they're going to invade Israel, and God's going to supernaturally deliver them. It's not going to be magically their fighter jets suddenly took them out. Like in the 6-Day War, which was seemingly miraculous, but it was still, current modern firepower that protected them from Egypt and the other nations. But when this invasion takes place, God is going to literally rain down fire upon this coalition of nations. 1/6 of them will survive, and the rest will be burned up and be bodies in Israel. and they're going to be burying the bodies for 7 months and burning their weapons for 7 years. And how do you burn an AK-47, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be burning wooden weapons, so something's going to take place. So this battle of Gog is going to be the catalyst whereby Israel will cry out to God, please help us. We can't protect ourselves. We can't defend ourselves. And that seems odd because right now Israel has nuclear weapons. So who would stand a chance, but apparently they'll be gone. So when they're attacked and they cry out, God will deliver them. And it says from that point forward, they will know that I'm their God and they're my people. So that seems to be the time when God stops hiding his face from them and he turns back to deal with them as a nation. That will coincide with the event that the Christian church calls the rapture, and will be taken out, and he's going to deal with the nation Israel. And that's when all hell breaks loose with the Antichrist appearing in the 7 years of tribulation.
All right. And I guess I see a quick question. Is Gog Russia?
I don't think Gog is Russia. I don't know who it is, but I just don't believe it's modern Russia as we understand it today. I think it's more likely going to be either Syria or somewhere closer in. And it's possible it could be the nations that essentially comprise the Caucasus right now. Because traditionally, Magog, who was a son or an ancestor of Japheth, settled in that region. So it's basically northeastern Turkey, Caucasus, Armenia. That's traditionally the region known as Magog. Now, we can't define it specifically because the records aren't that clear, but it could even include Syria. So it's going to be more likely to be that region than it is Russia, if the Bible is understood to be true.
All right. Joseph C. says Revelation 6:8 says that beasts will kill mankind. The word beast is venomous snake. Is this referring to satanic dominion?
I'm going to pull that up.
Yeah, I got it right on the screen there. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, it's 6:8. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword. So that's battle, that's war, and with hunger, famine, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. And the beasts of the earth, throughout the book of Revelation, there's a number of satanic type entities that come up out of the pit. So it could be talking about those. Beasts of the earth could be those horde of locusts that come out of the bottomless pit. It could be the fiery horsemen from the river Euphrates. It's any number of things. I don't think he's talking about lions attacking people and, bees stinging them and things like that. So it's more likely going to be these demoniac type creatures that come out of the bottomless pit.
Yeah, Dragon Slayer says massive computers are called the beast.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a connection when you think about the mark of the beast and you think about chips implanted in people and things like that. It's all working towards that one world government that the Antichrist will take over when he comes.
Yeah, he says the president's car is also called the beast. I know that's true too.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, so now this is kind of off topic, I suppose, but maybe not. We'll see. Davy Jones Locker says, "What do you think is behind the Mandela effect?"
I don't know. That I just don't know. I need to study that out. That's not the first time I've been asked that question, but I just haven't had time to research it. It's actually a topic I plan to cover on Bible Mysteries podcast, but I've got so many topics, Michael, to cover. I just haven't gotten to that one yet. I was able to squeeze in the Bermuda Triangle finally, because people have been begging me to do that one, but I haven't done anything on the Mandela effect, so I can't comment on it yet.
All right. Well, let me ask you this: is Atlantis mentioned in the Bible at all?
Not that I'm aware of. And the word Atlantis is not in the Bible, that's for sure. And nor is the word Atlantic. The Bible's focus is on the region of the world known as the Middle East. So it doesn't get much beyond that. The farthest country the Bible ever mentions is India and Dalmatia, which is Yugoslavia. And then Italy, of course, because Paul went to Rome. And there's a possibility that they went further than that. I mean, Paul could have traveled as far as Scotland, as far as we know, but we just don't know. It wasn't mentioned in the Bible.
All right. Pika Pika says there's a third part of the Bible you're still missing to this day.
Yeah, he's gonna have to tell me what that is.
Yeah, I guess maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if he knows more than all the theologians that have studied manuscript evidence for all these many centuries, I'd like to know what we're missing.
I mean, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to think that there's, chapters of the Bible that are still not found or haven't, maybe they're hidden away in the Vatican archives somewhere, right? I mean, isn't that possible?
It's certainly possible that manuscript evidence is being hidden by who knows what entities, whether it's the Vatican or anybody else. They discovered Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran, and they've found other things. There's Ethiopian copies of the Book of Enoch and things like that. So, but I mean, I don't know that there's a missing 1/3 of the Bible. I mean, who's to say what that is? But again, I go back to God said he would preserve his word perfectly. And if he didn't, he lied and he's not worthy of our worship. So your alternative is there's no God and we're wasting our time, or there is a God. And if he is, he's true and he preserved his record. You don't have any other choice.
All right. Dr. Strangelove has a question. He wants to know, is Fatima the daughter of Muhammad, the one from Portugal?
Don't know that either.
That would be an interesting twist.
Yeah, if Fatima, as understood by the Catholics, is the daughter of Muhammad, then we've got a real mess on our hands, don't we?
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. We're getting real close to 100 likes, guys, and there's well over 100 people here, so it'd be really cool if we can get to 100 likes for the end of the show. That's pretty awesome. And I'm looking here. I guess we got to that question already. I saw that one when it was posted and threw it out there.
Hey, I just saw in your chat there that Dragon Slayer is a Navy veteran woman, and not only do we thank you for your service, but what a cool handle! I love it.
Well, I mean, Dragon Slayer, right? I mean, it could be. Have I ever asked you if it's possible to kill a fallen angel? Is it possible for a man to kill a fallen angel?
I don't believe it is. Angels are greater in power and might than men, according to the Bible, and we were made a little lower than the angels. I don't see how an angel could. Or a man could kill an angel. A man apparently could kill a hybrid. So a Nephilim is hybrid angel human, and since the human part of him can die, then yes. Only God could destroy an angel. And incidentally, in case your listeners didn't know, he created hell for the devil and his angels. So the purpose of hell was never for man to go to it. It was for Satan and his angels to go to it. But men choose to join them, and that's why an individual would end up in the lake of fire.
All right. So is it possible? Would fallen angels survive a direct nuclear explosion?
I don't think they would be impacted by
it. Would it like bounce off them? Like oh, this kind of sucks.
They would have the ability to alter their dimensional state to not even be impacted by it. They could stand in the middle of the nuclear explosion, and I don't think it would matter because they're from the spiritual realm. They have physical being. But if Christ could appear and disappear from a room and he's got a body like that, then you would think the angels have something similar to that. But I think they travel in craft too. People think about angels as men with wings or something, but I don't believe they flew in the Bible with wings except for the cherubim. They flew in these crafts that we might identify as UFOs.
All right. But I mean, but so they can survive a nuclear blast, but they could be chained down in.
Yeah, with a spiritual type thing. So this dimension of the bottomless pit has got to be something interesting too, by the way, that when the devil himself is chained in the bottomless pit for 1,000 years, it's an angel that grabs hold of him and does that, not a man. So, people think about how scary it would be to run into the devil in a dark alley, when in reality, he's really, a beautiful creature. But the concept of the devil is red and scaly with a bifurcated tail and a hay fork, right? So I tell you who I don't want to run into in a dark alley is the angel whose job it is to wrap the devil in a chain and throw him in the bottomless pit. That's the guy I want to avoid.
All right, let me ask you this, because I think that this has been talked about on one of my shows before, and And I know it's kind of off subject, and it's kind of my own question, just kind of popped up in my head. When they're talking about Adam and Eve and how Eve was tempted in the garden and she ate the apple or the forbidden fruit, is it possible that what Eve actually did was have sex with the devil?
No, that's a common excuse me. That's a common misconception I think a lot of people have. But the sex was not had between Eve and the serpent, because even after they sinned, God said, and he pronounced to the serpent, that the seed of the woman would bruise the head of the serpent. And we didn't know who that woman would be. Ultimately, Mary would conceive Jesus Christ. And when you think about it, let me let your listeners chew on this a moment. A woman doesn't have seed. Women have eggs.
Yeah.
It's the male who has the seed in the sperm. So the seed fertilizes the egg and then a child is conceived. So he said the seed of the woman. Now the genetical blueprint is transmitted through the man, as I understand it, in the DNA. So Jesus Christ was born of a virgin because a man did not impregnate Mary. God did through the Holy Spirit. So the seed of the woman is Christ. And therefore, if that bloodline had been altered from humanity, from Eve all the way down to Mary, then the corruption would have not allowed for Christ to be born to be the seed of the woman. So it won't work. It will not match scripture to say that Eve, that the sin was that she had sex with the serpent. What she did was she disobeyed God and ate the wrong tree, the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, because she wanted to be like the gods. And Adam knowingly did it. She was deceived, but Adam did it on purpose.
All right. All right. Ash wants to know, how will we know it's God and not the devil in sheep's clothing?
How will we know what's God and not the devil in sheep's clothing?
How will we know it's God and not the devil in sheep's clothing? I guess when God returns.
I'm still missing the question. I'm not quite sure.
All right.
I need something more specific.
Maybe he can phrase it a little bit better. When Juan Bidhi Azuya says, is Gog and Magog coming to destroy Israel or save them from the Antichrist that is set up in the temple?
They're coming to rob them, to spoil them, according to the book of Ezekiel. Gog is not coming to save them from the Antichrist. The Antichrist won't be around until later, after Gog, the first time. Sorry, I need some water and I'm out of it and I'm struggling here.
You want to take a minute, go grab you some water? I'll chat with everybody here a second.
Yeah, give me just a moment, if you will.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead. All right, everybody. So we're going to give Scott a minute to grab some water. We are going a little bit over today. And as always, we appreciate his time. I see we're at 103 likes. It's pretty impressive. We actually able to break 100 likes today. I hope everybody's enjoying the show and that you share it and maybe spread the word a little bit about Conflict Radio. Remember, we are available on Spreaker, Apple iTunes, Rumble. We're on Rockfin. Let's see. I'm trying to think of that. Why is that podcast Joe Rogan's on is just not coming to my head? Oh, goodness. It's completely, I've lost it. I don't have any idea. Well, we're on there too. That's the one we're on too. So I guess I'm waiting for one of you guys to comment on what that is. Spotify. Thank you, David. We are also on Spotify. I don't know why I couldn't. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I know what it is. I just don't have any idea. So
I'm back, Michael.
All right, Scott. You ready for a question? You take a sip yet?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I just, I live in a part of the country where allergies are terrible right now. And I was struggling to keep from coughing all over your listeners. So anyway, yeah, I'm good.
All right, so we are at the end of the questions I put in there, so it's just a matter of getting everybody else's questions, and we're going to wrap up. All right, Scott.
You bet. I've got a few more minutes. Go ahead.
All right, so Bernard Evans says, "Isn't the Antichrist supposed to be loved by everyone? Is that a literal everyone? If so, how could that even be possible unless we don't have free will?"
Yeah, so the Antichrist isn't said in the Bible to be loved by everyone. It says the world will wonder after the beast, but the world is never to be understood as every single person because there are going to be those who do not take the mark of the beast, right? So it says he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, but that's all that do worship him. Okay. So there's obviously going to be people in that time that don't take the mark and they might be killed or persecuted. And certainly that would be true of the believers in Israel, which will be persecuted by him at that time. So the world will wonder after the beast, but it does not say that every single person will love him.
All right. Not quite human says, "Hi guys, sorry I'm late. Looks like he's finally got the Rona, and family got the Rona. He's not feeling very good right now. Paul, we've been there, man. Takes about a week, man. You'll be feeling back to normal. So my prayers to you and your family. Hope everybody is okay. All right, so let's see what else we got here for questions. Hermit Crab says Revelations is like a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy novel. It's just not real. What would you say to somebody who thinks that Revelation isn't real at all?
I don't know what you could say with somebody like that. If they're not going to believe the Bible is true, they're not going to be convinced by me. So it's the Spirit of God that convicts the heart. You know, I don't debate people for that very reason. I'll make my case and I'll state my belief, but only the Spirit of God can convince your heart to accept the truth. So I wouldn't waste their time, frankly. You know, if they don't want to believe the Bible is true, then they don't have to. They are free to believe what they want to, but you know, it's between them and the Lord.
All right. Blue Chicken says, if it bleeds, I can kill it. Are there any references to angels bleeding at all in the Bible, or getting hurt?
Not bleeding. There's references to them being defeated, and certain angels, in fact, the ones in Genesis 6 that did take the daughters of men and have the giants, the Nephilim, were brought down to the bottomless pit. So I don't know if they were physically hurt, but they were imprisoned. So in that sense, they're confined. And what we do know is that later on, when the bottomless pit is opened and they're released, they are like locusts with stings in their tails and all this kind of thing. So they literally degenerate from one condition to another, from one state to another.
All right. Vash says, question, was the Bible written before or after the Great Flood? If before, could the places it talked about be different to post-flood, and locations on the earth, city locations moved / wiped out, etc.?
You know, that's a really interesting question. The Bible was written after the flood of Noah. And as a matter of fact, if it helps you to know, the world existed without a written record of the Word of God for 2,500 years. So, how did men know what was true for that time? I wonder if any of your listeners know the answer to that. Before there was a written record, how did God reveal himself to the world?
Yeah.
The answer is the stars. The Bible says in Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. What we call the zodiac is the Hebrew Mazzaroth, and those 12 signs, which connect to the 12 tribes of Israel even before they existed, all tell the story of the birth, the virgin birth of Jesus Christ and his second coming. Virgo begins the year and Leo ends it, the return of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the second coming of Christ. There's a wonderful book by Ethelbert Bullinger called Witness of the Stars. If you've never read that one, you are in for a treat.
All right. Sapphire Elf says, I sometimes wonder, was Lucifer not the idea of Satan? Maybe he was right to fight God because he gave humans free will and he didn't have that option.
Well, man always had the free will option from God, so Lucifer didn't give it to him.
Yeah, well, no, I meant he gave humans free will and not angels. Do angels have free will?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Angels had free will and they made their choice. People have to understand that angels have existed before humankind for possibly millions of years.
Okay.
There's been battles going on in the spiritual realm and in the universe far longer than man has existed, by millennia.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think about, really. Does it mention
Almost like Star Wars.
angels having free will?
It doesn't mention it specifically. It doesn't even mention specifically that man has free will, except in the book of Leviticus chapter 1, where a person could bring a certain type of sacrifice. If he were to bring it, he was to bring it of his own voluntary will, according to Leviticus chapter 1 in verse 3. So it would seem unusual for God to create entities, which angels are our elder brethren, if you think about it. You know, we are related to them because they're sons of God and we believe and we become sons of God. So there's going to be a great family reunion someday. But the fallen angels made a choice. They rebelled. They had free will. They chose not to serve God and they chose to rebel against him.
All right. Dr. Strangelove says, is there any truth that the Vatican created the Islamic religion?
I don't think the Vatican existed, did it, in 600 AD, or am I wrong?
All right. So if let's rephrase the question then. Is it possible that the Romans had created it? Because that's what the Vatican is, right? It's just the Roman Empire just turned into the Vatican.
Well, not exactly. The Roman Empire fell at some point, and it broke into two legs: the Byzantine Empire to the east, and the Roman to the west. And the Holy Roman Empire eventually grew from that. What was the year that the Roman Empire finally fell? Was it 300 AD or 400? Somebody might know this. But whenever it was, Muhammad was around 600 AD. So it's possible that the Vatican could have existed 200 years before Islam, but what would be the point of creating that? How would the Holy Roman Church benefit from a religion that denied Christ and denied what they believe is true and spread through the force of might, which I realize in some part of Christian and Catholic history, they also wage war on the basis of the church, but it wasn't spread by the edge of the sword as an edict of the church, not mostly.
It's actually a fascinating subject, Dr. Strangelove. And Scott, do you know much about the Muslim faith and Islam?
I do. I've read the Quran and I've studied enough of it to know that for the most part, to me, it's kind of nonsensical. It doesn't really line up with history as I know it from the Old Testament scriptures. They've got Abraham living at the time of Noah, and that didn't happen. And there's other things like that. But it's funny how they don't overtly criticize Jews or Christians in the Quran. They call them the people of the book. So it's interesting how some of the more radical factions of Islam grew to be so anti-Israel or anti-Semitic or calling Christians infidels and things like that. So I'm really not sure how all that came about, but if you read the Quran, it can be interpreted different ways, and that's exactly what the problem is with the Bible too. Different factions, different cults, different denominations, whatever you want to call them, grew up around that. And there's many of them in Islam as well, not just Sunni and Shia.
All right. Is there any way we can get you on to talk about, I guess, some of these other religions and what exactly they are? Because Islam's actually pretty fascinating because Muhammad claims to be actually God, right?
No, Muhammad claimed to be the final prophet of God, and that's not true according to the Bible. So I reject that teaching. And they look for, instead of the return of Jesus Christ, they look for something called the 12th Imam to arrive. But I'll tell you, I would be happy to do that, Michael, but I am not an expert
Yeah.
on Islam or even Judaism. And we would be far better served by people that maybe grew up in that religion that converted, because I came from a no religion background and became a Christian.
Maybe
So,
you might could know somebody you could point me in their direction.
yeah, I'll look into that because I know there are converts from both, Christianity or Islam to Christianity and Judaism to Christianity that are far better equipped to discuss the tenets of their doctrines and what they understood and believed before they became, another faith.
All right, let me ask you this. I'm going to throw this one by you. Have you heard of Mahir Baba?
Could you repeat the name?
Mahir Baba, Meherbaba.
I have not.
All right. Well, he comes out of India, and I know about this guy because he had a spiritual center in Myrtle Beach when I used to live there years and years ago. That was actually pretty interesting. He actually claimed to be the reincarnation of God, and that he had actually come back to uh to I guess talk to us more about what he does. And it's really an interesting story. I'll send you a link on that guy, and if anybody in here knows who he is, maybe write it in there. Maybe I can describe it a little bit better. But boy, that's an interesting story with that guy. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Anybody claiming to be God is usually going to have some explaining to do.
I hear you. Pika says, why would Russia break the agreement that they made with Ukraine after Ukraine had surrendered their nuclear weapons in the 90s? And I would say probably because they were wanting to join NATO and have nuclear weapons from NATO brought in there. So that's probably has a lot to do with that. And
Yeah, I don't think it's as simple as that, Pika. You're only listening to one side of the argument, which is exactly what Michael and I are talking about. That you've got to not listen to the mainstream talking points, and again, nothing is saying from any of us that Russia's a good guy or Russia's a good country. We're just saying that there's more to this story than you're letting on, and Russia's not the only one that broke some agreements. So there you have it.
all right. All right. So it looks like I've got all up to. I'm trying to scroll through to see if there's any questions after. Okay, so Vash had a follow up to the question he had before we didn't quite understand. He said question reword, so I'll go ahead and bring this one in. When God come to the earth, how will we know it's him and not the devil in sheep's clothing?
Well, I'll tell you, if you read the arrival of Jesus Christ in Revelation 19, and you read that chapter, and you can find there's a possible way to mistake who God is with the devil, then you will have to explain how that could be. Because I'll read it to you just for the short version of it. And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, Revelation 19:11. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he doth judge and make war. And by the way, he's making war with fallen angels and Nephilim. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And it goes on from there to explain what's about to happen. And he literally takes the Antichrist and throws him in the lake of fire. And another angel takes the devil and chains him and throws him in the bottomless pit. So there won't be a possibility to mistake him. It just won't exist.
All right, and Dr. Strangelove's telling me to get Santos Bonacci on. I guess if I said that right, I will look into it. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning into the show today. Scott, that's going to do it for us, man. You want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Absolutely, Michael. As always, you're a gracious host, and I appreciate you inviting me on. utbnow.com, which is short for Unlock the Bible Now. That's our ministry. You can go to that website to learn all you need to know. We have Bible Mysteries Podcast, and you can subscribe, like, and share through any of your favorite podcast apps. We have weekly Bible studies that I do on YouTube and Facebook. We have a YouTube channel, which is also Bible Mysteries. You can subscribe there. And then you can write me at unlockthebiblenow@gmail.com.
All right, awesome, everybody. And all of the links are down in the description box below. Hang on a second, Scott. I want to chat with you a little bit when we're done. But just to let everybody know, you can always find us online. Just go to www.conflictradio.net. If you go to YouTube one day and we're not here, because I guess sometimes we like to push the limit, I guess, on what we can talk about and what we can't talk about. So if we're gone from YouTube, you can always find us on www.conflictradio.net. I don't know if I said .com the first time. I might have. It's .net. And you can always search for Conflict Radio on Rumble. And we are available on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, and all of your normal podcast catchers. Until next time, everybody, we'll be back on Thursday. And until then, batten down the hatches and be safe.